Hello and welcome to today's episode of Mitten Backstage. Thanks so much for joining us this week. This is my first repeat guest that I've had on the podcast, and I wanted to do it for two reasons. One, you might have noticed that in the recent episodes that have come out, I have mentioned someone who's been assisting with editing, and that person I also interviewed last year when things were very different. It was closer to quarantine. We were still all uncertain as musicians. You know, what could we plan for? What could we book for? Is it okay to do live music again? Can we meet with students in person? Can we meet with, other band members to rehearse in person? Who's gotten all their, immunizations, all that. All those questions were still up in the air in early 2021 and throughout, most of that year. And to sit down with today's guest and hear about their, various roles in the Grand Rapids music scene since things have opened back up was really cool. And of course, I'm talking about the wonderful Mak Mattis. Now, if you have seen Mak Mattis around the scene, it's probably because they're a drummer who teaches at the School of Rock in Grand Rapids, the newly opened School of Rock, as well as playing in bands like Camaram and Volitionary, and in years past in groups like OK Cool. But you can also see them at Broadleaf Beer, running sound and holding it down for all the bands that are coming into a great space. That venue's got great food. They built a stage. They just keep leveling up. It shows a level of care for the musicians coming in and to help, create a better environment to foster the audience-musician relationship so it doesn't feel like, oh, it's too loud for me to talk about dinner. all those things that we deal with as musicians. Like, do they even want music here? But anyway, happy to have them here to chat. I actually went to their house in their lovely basement studio space where they, also do audio work and video work. So hit them up if you're ever looking for something to do, something creative that you need assistance with. They're a great person. So before we get into today's conversation, I wanted to emphasize again that if you want to support this podcast, you can go to patreon.com/Tracy Snedeker. Things are going to be rolling out again. I've had a lapse in the Patreon just because of my health and free time. Any time devoted to it is just gone. So things are getting back for 2023. There's going to be some revamping, some streamlining of stuff that worked, taking out stuff that no one really cared about, and, trying to provide something that's fun and valuable without, needing to spend an arm and a leg, because you got enough to spend on between insurance and 12 streaming platforms. But if you want to support the podcast, you can go there. You can also go to DutchersSnedeker.com to see everything else that I'm up to around the internet. That website will also be retooled as well. If you're in Grand Rapids, December 21st, I will be playing with my group Normal Mode. We will be performing a variety of jazz pieces as well as originals, but the focus is going to be on Vince Guaraldi classics. So if you love Peanuts Christmas, with Charlie Brown and all the crew, all those nostalgic songs, we're going to be playing selections from that album at GR Noir. Again, that's December 21st, 7:30 to 9:30. Make a reservation if you're in the area and you like some good Christmas cheer. But let's get into today's conversation with Mak Mattis.
Yeah, Ryan Jamgotch is cool. I just met him, because I just joined the band that he plays guitar in. It was called Jude Lawley and the Flux.
Oh, okay.
And now it's called Camaram.
Oh, okay. I was wondering, because I saw the Instagram of, he might have even shared it.
Yeah.
And I was like, is this the same people in a new project or slightly different people? Or?
Just like a rename, because Jude was like, yeah, he like starts off the songs like their kind of concepts are created in his mind, but now it's more collaborative than like solo project.
Oh, yep.
Because it was just like he was writing the songs completely, like had the ideas for all the drum parts and like everything. But now that all of us are like collaborating on the songs a little bit more, he's like, well, it feels weird for it to be like my name and other people.
Right.
And so, like, we chatted and we were like, yeah, I guess we could. And, like, especially since they took a break for a little while, and, like, when they were in between drummers and stuff before I joined,
right.
like, they hadn't done a gig in, like, a year or something. And so he was like, well, we've been gone from the scene for a while anyway. So, like, it's kind of a good time to rebrand.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was, like, kind of when I met. It would, like, end of last summer was when I met Ryan Jamgotch and Jude and Brendan, all those guys for the first time. But now Ryan and I will, like, text each other back and forth about, like, hey, did you see this new, like, preamp or, like, whatever. Like, we just, like, send audio stuff back and forth, or, like, hey, did you watch this interview on Mixing with the Masters? Like, it was so cool, you know, just, like, stuff like that. So he's, like, an audio buddy now.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, which is cool. And his space is super dope too. I actually thought that building, the Fortress.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that building was, like, dead.
Yeah, I thought so, because as long as I've known it, there's been nothing in it, or it had signs that made it look like, oh, it used to be this thing.
Yeah.
But now, I've been inside there to see Ryan's studio, but also, Ben Steer lives there. And,
Yeah.
And I remember rehearsing there and being like, this would be an interesting place to live in.
Yeah, it's weird because there is, like, the apartment that's in there, what I call it, like, the Cube or something.
Yeah.
And you, like, I think it's 2 bedrooms, but, like, if you're living there with a partner, you could, like, share a room, obviously. So I think it's, like, maybe 2 or 3 people live in there since it's a 2-bedroom.
Oh, right.
Because Ryan lives in there now.
Oh, okay.
He moved in. So now he lives and his studio is in the same building, which is dope.
Wow. That's sweet.
But, like, I thought it was dead because, like, on the outside it was, like, the signs are old and, like, it just looked like it wasn't in business anymore. And I remember when he sent me the address to go to there, like, the first time I was ever there, it was for a cover gig with Nate Dill.
Oh, yeah.
Because he does a lot of, like, solo work, but there were, like, a couple festivals last summer that wanted, like, a full band.
Oh, okay.
And so he hired Jude and me, and then Austin Benzing, I think is his last name.
Yep.
He was on guitar for that, and so we met there. We were rehearsing in Electric Moon because Nate and Ryan are good buddies. And so the first time I went there, I, like, pulled in, and I was like, we're rehearsing in this abandoned warehouse? Like, what is this?
There's a motorhome in here?
I know.
Like,
I was like, what? And then I walked in, and I was like, oh, no, it's like, yeah, he had, like, a full studio and everything in the basement. And I was like, oh, okay. Totally did not think that was what this was. I thought we were going to be, like, in the parking garage where all the cars were. And, like, I was like, are we just going to, like, set up in this abandoned place and rehearse?
Garage.
Yeah, in this garage. And it was not that at all, which was funny.
Yeah, and I know Michael Dawes has his studio in there too. Was it Tree Tone or whatever?
Is it on, like, the main floor or the second floor?
I think it's on the main floor, like, down the hallway, I believe, from where the living space is.
Okay.
It's a smaller room, but I know he's done work there. He just put out a single, like, a couple days ago with it's a new project called Moss Manor.
That's cool.
And it's him and Dan Rickabis from the Crane Wives and Seth Bernard. So it's, like, just the most positive, like, cozy music.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it's very, very colorful, and but, like, to have, a building like that with it's just managed by musicians is sweet.
Yeah, because I know there's, like, rehearsal spaces and stuff you can rent out too, because the Hacky Turtles are renting out one of their rooms now.
Oh, okay.
And I think they did a lot to it too, because, like, I guess the floors were kind of gross or something, and so they, like, painted the walls and, like, refinished the floors and stuff, and, like, actually did a lot to it to make it the space, like, kind of how they wanted it, which is super cool.
Oh, yeah.
And so I guess they're gonna rehearse in there, but somebody told me, I don't know if it was Ryan, it might have been Ryan, that, like, La Dispute used to rent rooms in there.
Oh, so
and rehearse before tour.
So like early 2000s then?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
Because I know the members of that band are kind of spread all around the world now.
Yeah, from what I can tell.
One of them lives in Seattle. I think one of them lives in Australia. That might be my brain making something up, but I think their members are pretty spread out now. But I think when they like used to be local to GR, they would like rent out a room there and rehearse before like going on tour.
Yeah.
Which is cool. So that building has been around for a while.
Yeah, it's like a little time capsule.
Yeah.
of of Grand Rapids, and I think of like, like Skeletones came back. The DAC is back.
DAC is back.
DAC is back. There's like, this kind of like steady like DIY indie vibe resurgence of like, okay, we have more places to play now, and seemingly Skeletones was all ages, or was it?
Yeah, I think so.
So it's like,
I know the DAC is for sure.
Yeah, because I remember like I missed that heyday of Skeletones. I caught it when it was like kind of on its way out, when it had moved and changed names, and
yeah,
I saw like Periphery at whatever iteration it was.
That would have been sick.
Yeah, it was it was Periphery after their bass player left. So it was right when Mark Holcomb was like about to join the band, and I had a guitar lesson with him and got to play like his cool, custom whatever Bernie
That's
Rico
sweet.
Jr.
Yeah.
and then it was them and Textures. They're like a Dutch progressive metal band that doesn't really play anymore, but they were sweet in their heyday. And then who was the other? I'm remembering the album art, but I can't remember the band name. They were like a kind of a neoclassical influenced, but they were fronted by the singer at the time from Corellia, who that band like had the weirdest arc, because they made like I think one cool EP that a bunch of people loved, and then they kept teasing the new thing, and it got kicked out years, and then the singers kind of fell into like a weird conspiracy rabbit hole, and like
What?
the money got misplaced from the Kickstarter they did, and
Whoa.
and then like years later the guitarists were like, okay, we still have the music, so we're gonna finish the album.
Weird.
Like, even though we can't continue the band.
Wild.
Yeah, it was like a weird, but I remember, Human Abstract was the band.
Okay.
Yeah, I think don't they have an album Digital Veil, or I don't know.
I have no idea.
It's been so many
Eons.
so many albums.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good that there's, I don't know, like with things opening up again, there's a lot more happening and people are able to do things again, and
Yeah.
it seems like we're all back to being busy.
Well, it's just like live music is making a resurgence again, and so it was like a good example is I just had a Christmas gig with this community chorus called the Lakeshore Community Chorus. They are like Saugatuck, Douglas area. And it's a bunch of older folks that all come together to do this chorus. And they haven't had a concert since pre-COVID, especially because like most of them are high risk, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so like as soon as COVID hit, they like stopped all concerts, and then I guess finally this year the members felt comfortable like coming together and meeting regularly. So they started back up again this summer, and then this concert that we just did on Sunday was like their first one in 3 years. Yeah, so like it's just like little things like that I feel like are starting to kind of make their way back. And it's just like it's a little, community chorus, but like for the people that live out there, it means a lot to them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like the things that you almost take for granted, like certain annual things, or like, like for me it was the musical at West Shore Community College.
Yeah.
Like I had done a couple productions, and then you know, it was like, well, we can't do it next year. And then it even got canceled earlier this year because of Omicron. So like that variant just, I think Ludington had like a 25% infection rate.
Whoa.
So it was like, okay, every event we do, someone gets COVID.
Yeah,
we can't.
so we can't do this.
Yeah. So it was very much like waiting to get the okay. You know, fingers crossed, because the last time it got canceled was like a week before Christmas. So we're approaching that. But it sounds like I'll be doing it again. Which is crazy to think, you know, like those productions aren't like, they're big in terms of like, you know, realizing a staged musical and then having a pit that's either built into the staging somehow, or, you know, we had it for Mamma Mia, we had it in a separate room, and they had to rig CCTVs and pipe in music, and then like have the, you know, a camera feed to the back of the room so that they could see the pit conductor. And like, and that's like, okay, a team of like 40 people maybe, maybe not even. So it's like, you think of how much it takes just to do that, and then trying to manage COVID. It's like, I totally get why people didn't want to try and like make sure, you know, you can't really say yes unless it's for sure yes.
Yeah, Fruitport had their musical, and I think it was their first musical back since COVID. It was like end of the school year, so like earlier this year, like in the spring, I want to say, they did Wizard of Oz, and it was the same thing where the pit was in the back and they had CCTVs, and like it was this whole big production. But I remember, and that might have been when Omicron was making its resurgence.
Oh yeah.
Or like just came around. But like we, all the pit were like wearing masks except for like the horn players, because like obviously they can't really.
Right.
But like I was on drum set and I was wearing a mask, and it was because like we were all in this room back there in like close quarters, and like none of us, I didn't want to get sick, because who was gonna play my drum part last minute, or you know, whatever, and like you don't want to get any of the cast members sick, and it's like a bunch of kids too, so like, you know, they, you know, coming into like this like germ pool basically of all of these like kids, and so but we were all wearing masks during that, but it was like their first musical back since COVID, and you know, you hire all these musicians and stuff for it. And it's like those little things that like we take for granted but rely on for income. Like those are like starting to slowly come back, and like I never really thought how like those little things all added up.
Yes.
To like really make my income. Like I was surprised.
Yeah, well, especially I think of the latter half of this year, being able to, you know, start with a nutritionist and massage therapist, and I'm gonna find a chiropractor, you know, just like
that's dope though.
Just the works. But then to think like, okay, I'm spending this money, but it's not like, okay, the next gig's a week.
Yeah.
Like it's like a steady stream of like high paying stuff, and then consistent, you know, especially with the Old Goat residency, like that's, you know, money plus tips twice a week, and then I can double up on gigs, which I don't think I want to do a ton of, especially after this weekend, but because I did like, you know, 3 hours at the Old Goat, and then had like 2 hours, and then loaded in for a wedding, and then did cocktail hour and 3 sets on top of that, so it was like several hours of playing in a day.
But you're like gigs now. Like your full time is gigs?
Yeah, because during 2020 was when, you know, the entertainment team at Founders got furloughed, and then we all got let go in that fall. And
which I hear they're hiring back.
They're hiring. I know they've hired some, because, you know, like Olivia Vargas was telling me a little about it, because she just played there with August. And there's like aspects of it that feel like the old days. In my brain, I'm just like, okay, like I'm glad Paul is stepping up to take booking. Like Paul's just, you know, kind of been a big fan of not just founders, working in the tap room and making sure everyone's working, but like he was, at every show basically I worked, so
yeah,
he knows at least what artists would want and what they need, and it sounds like there's certain like concessions in terms of like how much they can comfortably pay out. But I don't know all the logistics. It might just be a like just try and get the bare minimum started and then try and rebuild the culture.
Yeah,
but it it's that thing where it's never going to be like it was.
No.
It's gonna take a bit to get to a new place. So
well, and hopefully hopefully a good thing too.
Yeah, that's always the hope, that there's a good thing. And yeah, it's tricky going from like having a team that's like dialed in and full of musicians that are also very active in the scene to like people who understand the scene to a degree but aren't fully in it.
Yeah.
They're not, their livelihood isn't in it.
Yeah.
Like, other than getting paid to do some of the work.
Right.
But, they're not gigging out or, having to make certain drives or playing venues where you're like, this is what they pay, or this is how they don't even provide, I can't even have water.
Yeah. Oh, I've got some stories for you. Sorry, I got you sidetracked though. Mainly gigging now.
Yeah, mainly gigging. And then, freelance writing for, the occasional person will hit me up for like a private review. I still have 2 I need to do that just been lost to how crazy the last month has been.
Yeah.
But then John Sinkovitz will send over stuff for like local spins, and that's, the nice little bump in PayPal money.
Yeah. So you like doing the album review stuff then?
Yeah, it's interesting because I like doing it, and a lot of people have said, like even people who I haven't necessarily written about, but I've written about their friends, and their friends have shown friends. I was talking to Lily Talmers, this really great folk singer-songwriter who made an album with a lot of, like David Ward is in it, and Aidan Cafferty, who it was like, he lives in New York now, but he was an Ann Arbor bass player, like super talented.
Yeah.
And then other jazz, U of M jazz musician affiliated people. But she was like, oh, I read your review of my friend Jeff, and I loved your writing. And I was like, oh, I didn't.
Cool, thanks.
I'm like, that's sweet.
Yeah.
Like it's nice. I always like thinking about different ways I can express, I don't know, music and being creative, and so to have that as an outlet is fun. I just need to get back in a rhythm.
Yeah. I had when I took capstone at GV, my capstone professor, I don't remember what her name was. I think she also taught world music or something.
Oh, wait. I'm thinking of Fort Psych, but she taught something else.
It might have, I think it was Fort Psych.
Lisa Fort Psych?
Yep. Like a little kind of out there.
Yeah, because I had her for, I think it was a capstone as well.
Yeah, she did
I think it was the only time.
She did my capstone for my Bachelor of Arts, and we had to, it was like a lot of essays, and I remember her feedback on one was like, you would have a really good career as somebody who writes like program notes.
Oh.
And I was like, that's really random. I don't really want to do that, but thanks. I'm glad you liked the writing.
Well, and I always think of it as like, because what is retiring for a musician? It's like you get to a point where you can kind of live comfortably and play when you want and what you want. In my head.
Which is that even retiring?
Yeah, it's like it's just more relaxed career.
Yeah,
yeah.
Existing maybe.
Or like I think of like, okay, if I'm, to a point where I'm not trying to, go on the road or something.
Yeah.
Like like if, oh, you could write program notes. All right, let me hit up a theater and see if I get, then I get, free concert tickets and,
right.
Discounted concessions. I don't know.
Right. At this one random place in this one town.
Yeah. Well, and I tell, all my non-musician friends or, family members who aren't musicians, the amount of social currency you get as a musician is often surprising.
Yeah.
Like, just not even like, I don't walk into a place and be like, all right, the usual on you. Like, I'm the musician. But it's, it's like people who offer, even as a baseline, like, oh, you can have food or drink. And then, oh, like this hoodie. Like,
yeah.
Josh Rake just was like, take a hoodie. And I'm like, cool.
Thanks, dude.
I like hoodies.
Yeah.
And then, people have, housing on the road or, showing up. There was some, I can't remember her name, but she just popped up with like treats at a festival. And she was just like,
that's so
hey,
nice.
I made some no-bakes.
Yeah.
I was like, yes.
Housing on the road is like also something that's like you don't want to take for granted. Because like that is like a big portion of the budget goes to like lodging if you don't know somebody in that city and have a free place to stay.
Yeah.
And so like that, I just a couple weekends ago, Vagabonds was doing a weekend run.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So we played in Indiana and then in Chicago, and it was like the shows were a little like DIY, which there's not really any money in the DIY scene.
Right.
And so like we knew we weren't really going to be making anything, and we were like, okay, well if you add, I don't know, like a motel or something onto that, like you're starting to dip into like the negative where you're actually spending money to do these shows. And luckily Luke had a connection in Indiana. It was like an old friend.
Oh.
And so we had somewhere to stay for free, but it's like if we hadn't had that, we would have gone from making a little bit of money to like no money or been in the negative, like paying to do the tour.
Yeah, it's partially, like Earth Radio's thinking of little tours we want to try and do next year.
Yeah.
And, it's like we want to go to Colorado, and we have friends who in Dandu, this group who have played here, and we've played with them, and they're old friends of Justin's. So they're helping us route, because they always do like an East Coast. They'll go out east and then come back. Mm-hmm. Or they'll do like kind of a mix of the like short runs, come back, and then maybe they'll do, like they did a special show where 2020 they were booked to do the Chop Shop in Chicago with opening for Louis Cole Big Band.
That's cool.
And got kicked a year because of quarantine. Yep. And then they're still able to do it. They were able to like figure out a backline and fly out, and so yeah, it's like I feel like that's the point I want to get to with the bands as a good foundation. Like we have a good network to help cut down costs, but then we have, which is kind of happening, like Earth Radio's got a nice chunk of money that, granted it's going into 2 EPs, but it's still like, okay, we're not like scrambling to try and find the money to pay for an album. So now it's, the next step is trying to find a van and just keep growing the infrastructure in that way. And,
and then it's like, when do you make that jump from self-management to like hiring a management team?
Yeah, and it's tricky with, like if we were like, I don't know, a blues band. Like that's way easier to market, and there's a circuit. You can just like House of Blues, they're everywhere. There is a house where blues exists. But then like with Earth Radio, we've been trying to we dub it future soul, but we're also trying progressive R&B just to kind of make it a little more tangible.
Yeah.
Like just soulful music that happens to have eclectic influences.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to figure out how to market that. But then I see bands like, like Thumpasaurus, where they're just goofy and kind of like a Devo meets Talking Heads meets West Coast jazzers.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just the fact that they have a uniform and content that's like funny and compelling, and I know they got a Samsung ad placement recently too.
That's
so
cool.
It's like it's finding those like little avenues to like introduce introduce art in the right way versus like you play a venue and people aren't paying attention and they're kind of annoyed or
yeah. Well, and it's hard too because like I mean you want to be creative and like individualistic and like do your own thing, but at the same time you feel this pressure to like fit in a box somehow just so that you're like marketable. You know what I mean? And so it's like that balance between the two of like being individualistic and doing your own thing or like, you know, being like bookable, you know, at venues or whatnot.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see, like, I feel like if you skew younger, the sky's the limit because I guess if you have an infrastructure in general, I think of like, you know, like Dami and JD Beck, like they're hyper talented, but the way they were presented was really nice because it's like, how do we visually represent their music? And it's like, oh, a bunch of flowers in very cozy settings.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, colorful and cozy, but then they have like the Mac DeMarco, but then also Snoop Dogg and Busta Rhymes, but then also Kurt Rosenwinkel. So they have like the jazz, they have the hip hop, they have it's like everything that they can kind of play around in as a duo.
Which is cool.
Yeah, and it shows, you know, a level of like care and planning, and because it's like how long ahead of time before the album came out, you know, it's like, oh, they got late show appearances, songs debuting in Nord sessions. They got the Zildjian live session. Like, there was just a building, and kind of the same with like, I think of like Yebba's album release too, where it's like, who's on the record? Pino Palladino, Questlove, James Francis, like all
Which
these
is crazy,
just heavy hitter.
Yeah,
and then to like put out the record and then put out a live in studio thing that included a John Mayer cover to like prime her audience for her opening for John Mayer. It's like, you know, it'd be sweet if everything lined up that way, but it also takes a lot of time and money and energy.
I think that was like, and definitely there was a management team behind that, right?
Yeah.
It's not like she was doing all of that on her own.
No, it would be, if she did that all on her own, it'd be like, all right, why is there any...
There's no way.
It's like, that's possible.
There's no way.
There's no... Yeah, there's... And we've been thinking about that too, like what does management look like? We're at least trying to organize around like setting up different systems of like how we think about booking or what happens with, you know, money coming in or how payouts work, or, you know, we're looking at aesthetic, like we're picking fonts and colors and different schemes, and
which is all something that like marketing, you know, would do. Like if you had a label and a team and all that stuff, like that's something that like social media and marketing would normally, or like branding would like take care of that for you. And you're doing all of it yourself, so like there's all these little things that go into it that you wouldn't even like think about.
And that's where, like, you know, because I think of like, you know, like recruiting you to help with editing the podcast and, you know, producing new episodes, and, you know, reaching out for all the wellness help. And it's like, I'm at that point where like, I'm not wealthy, but the money coming in can now be given to other experts, or other help, or other, you know, just anything to help lighten the load. But then at no point am I feeling like part of it's, I don't know, getting rid of the whatever part of my head is still thinking like, oh, I'm the young kid who can do it all, and everyone is eyes on me, or
Jack
whatever.
of all trades.
Yeah. You're so talented. And it's like, talent doesn't help me pay my bills all the time.
No. And it's like,
it's work.
You feel that pressure too to be able to do all of these things yourself, right? You're like, I have to be really good at video editing and like social media marketing, and it's like you try to teach yourself all of these things, or you feel like you have to teach yourself all of these things, but it's like those are things that people who specialize in those things can do really well. And no matter how hard you try, sometimes when you try to teach yourself all of those things, it's like you really only have like a surface level knowledge of each thing. And so it is that like jack of all trades, master of none thing, where you're like, I can do a little bit of video editing and I know a little bit about like the social media algorithms, but there's somebody out there who can do all of that stuff like way better.
Right. And when I think of like how you've taken on so many roles and jobs, and it has it been like, I mean, I'm sure it's all been fun and good things, but has it felt like weird, or like do all of them kind of, you know, like you went to school for audio engineering, so now you're getting into the rhythm of that, and then you're at School of Rock, so you've always, you know, done teaching and so I don't know.
I guess that is like, if I think about it too, maybe I also am putting myself in the like jack of all trades situation, but like I'm getting to a point now though where I feel like I'm honing it in a little bit. Like I know the things that I want to do and the things that I don't want to do, and so I'm starting to follow that a little bit more. Like I know I like, or I want to do like audio and get into that now that I have my degree, and because it started off like I wanted to get into it, but I didn't really have the knowledge. And I've always been like, I like the formal education setting. Not a lot of people do, but I really liked the idea of going to school to study it.
Right.
And so I was glad that there was GRCC in the program that I could go through like somewhere locally that wasn't very expensive. But like I'm starting to hone that in a little bit now, where like the kind of like extra jobs or gigs or whatever I do on the side like are audio related, like doing the sound at Broadleaf, or you know, editing the sound and stuff for the podcast. Like those kind of, I guess, are falling under like the audio realm. And I've been like toying around with the idea of like, because I have the studio and stuff, like making my own company, or like having like an LLC, so like all of that like gig work kind of falls under the umbrella of like the business, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
And I know I want to do that for like performing too, because then like you think of all the side gigs that I do for like playing drums and whatnot. It'd be nice too if all of that kind of fell under like one business, and not even just for like tax reasons, because musicians doing taxes are like, what even is that?
Yeah, CPA was the first thing I hired last year. Is like, I need to hire help.
Yeah.
It's like, do my taxes, help, please.
But it's like, even for like marketing too, like if I want to get myself out there more for like audio gigs or whatever, it's nice to have that as more of like a marketing thing. But like, I feel like I have kind of settled into this, like the things that I like, or that I want to do and that I know I'm good at, are like audio, playing drums, and I guess teaching.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that I'm like the best percussion teacher on the planet, but I've been doing it since college.
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of like one of the fail safes that I've fallen into, of like, I need a steady revenue stream. For most musicians, the steadiest revenue stream we have is like regular music lessons, you know, like teaching people on a weekly basis. And so that's kind of how School of Rock came into everything, was like, I wanted to make that jump from having coffee as my full-time job and music as like my part-time job.
Oh yeah.
To music as like the full-time. And so it was kind of like fitting all of these pieces in together to start off with. So like a little bit of teaching, a little bit of playing, a little bit of audio work. And it still is that, like, little bit of everything. But I think especially as like live gigs are coming back and things start to get rolling again, I think I could focus a little bit more on a specific place if I wanted to. Like if I really wanted to dig into audio, I think there are opportunities out there that when they present themselves, like I could go for it and make audio more of a thing than like teaching, or you know what I mean?
Right. Make that shift.
Yeah. I don't know
oh.
if it's like that for you too.
Yeah. Like the 5-year plan, like I'm starting to do that now, but in still leaving some abstraction to some of the,
What is your 5-year plan?
that I think right now the top of it is I need to just focus on getting healthier, because then that will make everything.
Then you can do the things you want to do.
Yeah, it'll be
I
more.
feel that.
I can like,
Yeah.
can go places.
Yep.
I can. Yeah, that's the baseline.
Yeah.
And then I know, kind of what you were talking about, like incorporating aspects of the different branching career things into like I don't think an LLC for everything, but like like a music LLC, and then maybe I set up some sort of rule for what happens with funds that come in. Like with my tip money, it's just like, oh, I'm saving tip money for when we need to cash tolls or
Yeah.
just that kind of stuff, which is little things, but definitely like I feel like with the 5-year plan for me is like we're growing Earth Radio. We had a great year this year. We have some interesting, prospects next year with the 2 EPs, and we're kicking off the year with a planetarium show, which will be sweet. We're doing 2 of those.
Who's mixing those, by the way?
Oh, what is his name? I'm blanking on his name, because Nate Ising is the visual designer.
Okay.
And he worked with Normal Mode, and also when we did our residency, and he adapted the Dome show into a projector.
Okay.
So he's doing the visuals. I'm trying to remember the sound guy's name, because he's just there as their in-house.
At Third Coast?
Was it the planetarium, the Roger B. Chafee?
Okay.
Oh, you were meaning the EPs.
The EPs.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh,
who's mixing the EP?
Yeah, Kevin's he worked with us on this first one. We had Paul Clemson, also part of the studio sessions.
Okay.
He functioned a lot as like, he kept a lot of things flowing, like helping with setup. As we were tracking, he was manipulating a bunch of effects pedals and just like creating different interesting moments and colors and textures we could use.
Yeah.
And also giving us different advice, and some that we took, some that we were like, let's try this instead. But that was fun having him in the studio. And then I think we're going to send it to Ian Gorman to get mastered again, because he always does a good job.
Sweet.
And he also gets it set up for vinyl, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then the new one, the other new one that will come out, we're obviously focusing on this first EP because it's gonna drop. I think in February is what we're gonna announce.
Okay.
And what we've been telling people.
Yeah.
And what we're planning, but
Yeah.
the other EP was from our Vermont trip that we did in October. And that was like, 10 days in mainly Charlotte, Vermont, a little bit in Burlington. We rehearsed at a studio that was owned by a guy who used to work for Sound Toys, which was sweet.
Yeah.
Getting to meet that crew. Mm-hmm. And then Jeremy, what is his last name? Jeremy the sound guy. No. Jeremy... I'm blanking on his last name, but he works for Lane Gibson Recording and Sound.
That's cool.
And I guess his background was he interned there in his teens, and then left to do other music stuff and work, left Vermont, and then came back to kind of take care of family stuff, and then basically just got a key to the studio and has just been running that studio ever since.
I forgot that you guys drove all the way out there to like do your writing and stuff. That was where you recorded too, right?
Yeah, we stayed at a farm owned by this Dutch couple, Roel and Teeny. And they're both like very like very self-sufficient, but you could also tell like the community they built, because Rule does a lot of like ecological work. Like he'll get on Zoom meetings with teams trying to, solve water issues or climate issues.
That's
or,
cool.
Like he's just managing projects.
Yeah.
But then their farm, it's got solar and it's very self-sustaining.
Yeah.
They raise goats and chickens, and they have all sorts of produce, and
That's so cool.
and everything we ate was like, oh yeah, we made this yogurt, we made this kimchi, we made this. It's like, and then even like it's like, oh, what's that over there? Oh, that's where the yarn gets dyed. Oh, you make your own yarn. Cool.
That
like-
kind of life, though, is like that lifestyle is your full-time job, though.
Yeah,
You don't do anything else.
No, they have a couple farmhands who I'm totally blanking on their names, but we saw them throughout the week. But yeah, we mainly stayed. It was in was it the milk house? It was like a little house attached to the barn, and we wrote everything there in that house. And the only instruments we had, it was like Justin found an acoustic guitar that he brought, or maybe it was just the one he already owned, because he had a fretless classical mailed to Vermont.
Whoa.
And so he had that for the recording.
Yeah.
But then I had, I was able to fit like one of those M Audio, I think the Oxygen 3, like the 49 key
Yeah.
MIDI controllers in my
Yeah.
laptop, and then I just ran that out of my little Focusrite Scarlett into a
Like a little 2i2 or something.
Yeah, it was I think the first gen 2i2.
Whoa.
Like I still have that one.
Nice.
But that I ran out into a one of those Anchor Bluetooth speakers.
Nice.
So it was just like, all right, keys and
Little keys.
just keyscape. And then David, he had I think the drum was it was not a hang drum, but like some kind of drum that's probably more regional to the Netherlands, but it's like you hold it and you hit it, but he would put it on the ground with a couple, a couple cymbals, and then he had a yoga mat with a couple other cymbals, and he would just like hit them with mallets or sticks.
That's cool.
But yeah, we wrote all the songs there, and then we had 2 days at Layden Gibson before we left. So those were the last 2 full days were in the studio.
Wow. So it was only 2 days for recording.
Yeah, so out of the 10 days total, it was a day of travel on either side, and then 6 days of writing and 2 days of recording.
That sounds really intense.
Yeah, what definitely helped was having a theme to go off of, because we wanted it to be like, okay, what are the goals? It's collaborative, everyone gets an input, and we're writing all together in real time. And then it's If the Earth Could Speak was the overarching prompt. So everything that was pitched musically or lyrically, we would, retool or think about how it fit into the arc of everything. And and it was kind of, I think the overall arc of the album is there's the inhale, and then at some point there's the exhale, and the inhale is Mother Earth taking in everything, getting ready to speak, but then also with the inhale, kind of the destruction of the old. And then the latter half of the album is like, breathing life, and it just kind of ends with this very, very meditative song where we, there's not a lot of key changes. It's all just a couple chords and like one motif towards the end that's more rhythmic in 7. And then we put an interview with Rule talking about like life and the environment.
That's cool.
And just made it this like cool, the end cap to a record.
I forget that Hannah does stuff with like vocal chakra.
Yeah, she did, I think, 3 different workshops this summer.
Yeah.
One of them was at Bliss, and I think one was at Harvest, and I can't remember if maybe the other one was just independent of the band or being at a festival.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know how much she's incorporating, because she has her vocal wellness studio now.
Yeah.
And I know there's tenets and things that she incorporates into how she thinks about singing and teaching singing.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many of her students are like, can we do vocal chakra exercises?
Yeah.
I think she just kind of leads people through different exercises that draw from that kind of stuff.
Well, just like that album concept of like Mother Earth, like inhaling, exhaling, sounds like, I don't know, almost like spiritual in a way. And like vocal chakra work is also kind of like spiritual. It reminds me of like, I don't know, like crystals and tarot and that kind of like, you know, like naturalistic, spiritualistic stuff. Which sounds like maybe that's just her bringing that influence into the album.
Yeah, and like I think it also, because I'm always, I don't know, I'm obviously growing up in a religion. It's like you get to a point where you're like, all right, I have questions and the answers aren't sufficient, so now I have to go find other like opinions or dissections or, you know, perspectives.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm not a person who would I would entertain buying like a salt lamp. Like that seems chill, but I'm not going to think it's, you know, going to heal my broken leg or something.
Yeah.
Just being in the room.
Yeah.
But I also think of there is something to having a North Star that's like an easier focal point, and I think, you know, that's why some people are drawn to it, because it's a sense of community and you know, I always just think of like, I don't know, it's easy with those kind of communities to kind of grift too, so I'm always very wary of like how that's expressed. Not that Hannah does any of that at all. She's very knowledgeable about it, but also practical.
Yeah.
Versus, I don't know, people trying to sell like think of like the diamond water.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's water filtered through a diamond.
And you're like, okay, what is that gonna do?
It's gonna cost $10 for a bottle.
I like to take that kind of stuff with like a grain of salt, and like my partner and I talk about this sometimes too, because like I like horoscopes or whatever, and like I'm a Gemini. I don't think I seem like a Gemini to most people. But like I think horoscopes are like just like kind of fun.
Right.
And like interesting, but like I don't base my like entire relationships off of horoscopes.
Right.
It's like the same thing with like crystals. I think it's just like it's fun and it's interesting, and it's like it's kind of like just like the energy you put into it is kind of what you get out of it, you know?
Right. Well, and thinking of, you know, the wellness stuff, it's like the people that I think of, like a massage therapist, like she's a yogi and like there's those aspects, but you can tell that it's, you know, it's not just that she owns crystals, and that's why it's like she's got a doctorate. It's very, you know, a lot of work and intention and lifestyle and habits. And so, you know, I see the value in those things. And then I'm, you know, I don't mind hearing other perspectives too. Like if, you know, if I get a tarot reading and it's like, this is what's going to happen. You're like, cool. Like I could attach something to that meaning and help reframe an idea, I guess. Like, it's, you know, I'm not going to, you know, freak out if it's like, this is the death card.
Yeah.
You're like,
I think it's
it's
like, it's just like food for thought, right? So like you hear something like that, and it's like, it's just like an interesting thought or perspective for you to like reframe something, or, you know, it just like, it helps you think about maybe a challenge or a struggle that you're going through. It helps you think about it in a different way, maybe, or like have a different perspective on it, or maybe try approaching it in a different way. I don't necessarily think it's like you draw, I don't know, 3 of cups upside down and that means you're gonna die tomorrow. Like
Yeah.
It's not like that set in stone. I think it's more of just like food for thought.
Right. And well, and I think of like, at least for me, I always joke that every day I learn something that's, kind of brain breaking. And not even in, like conspiracy town, but more like I listened to a piece, it was like a 2-part podcast episode about how, I think the titles were, it was on the podcast Behind the Bastards, and it was how cigarettes invented the modern world and how like the industries that made cigarettes also had to justify their existence by creating modernity and like it's a cool like after dinner or like the modern man smokes Lucky Strikes.
Yeah.
And then but then they delve into like like the top 40 that didn't used to be a thing until Lucky Strike ran a bunch of ad campaigns highlighting the top hits of the day.
Yeah.
And then other people imitated, or like Winston cigarettes making the Flintstones. Like the Flintstones wouldn't be around if it weren't for that company.
Yeah.
And their early cartoons are very like buy cigarettes.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's trying to understand the different forces. I think of shows like Adam Ruins Everything, where like I remember finding out about the De Beers Diamond Corporation.
Yeah.
Just being like, wait a minute, so that thing about marriage was just an ad campaign that we
The
all
whole
just took
time.
for life?
Yes. We have it for life now. It's never going away.
Yeah, it's like, wait. It's like y'all just really just were like, yeah, this is what they did in the 1800s.
And everybody has to do this now.
Yeah. And so in that aspect, it's like whenever I get introduced to something that's like, it seems too good to be true, I'm always like, it's like, what's the catch?
Yeah.
Or, like how, like crypto is the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
I think of like FTX, how that went bust. And it's like, so when I'm learning and trying to parse through all these things, I also have to be reminded as a musician, going to different places, you're like, festivals are easy places to just like dip in, do something crazy and leave.
Yep.
So it's like, I'm always like, not, showing up and being like, who's the criminal? But like, just kind of being like, I don't know if like this guy's got a weird vibe and he's selling like something that's not just like a shirt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's like trying to understand things as an artist and be informed by them. But then I think that's where the rift for me comes in, is like, I want to get to a better wellness point so that when I do take in stuff, I have the energy and systems to put things
Totally
back out versus just being like, ooh.
Yeah. Well, and like, how have you felt recently, like, just like creatively wise? Because I feel like I'm at this point where like, just like the world in general and things is just like so shit right now. And it's hard to like, I want to be informed and know what's going on, but at the same time it's like there's a certain point where you're so informed and it's all bad that it just like makes you so depressed.
Yeah, Hannah and I were talking about that because in one part she was like, oh, I don't really take that stuff in because like I got you and Chris for that. And I'm like, okay, but then you're also like, she's like, like, what are you going to do with all this info you're taking in? Like, it doesn't seem like, a very happy existence. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that's true also. Like, I have to, part of my well-being is, trying to parse through it and be motivated, I don't know, and rather than like, just like, hopeless.
Yeah.
Yeah. Creatively, it's, I've had, and I still have them listed, like projects I want to do and focus on. But yeah, it's been, I think between taking in all of that, the transition that I think with me, it's always like, oh, if I just work hard, there's still that meritocracy side of me that is if I just work hard, and then what happened this weekend, I worked hard and then I was down all Sunday because
you felt like shit.
Yeah, and I must have like pulled something in my back because I was like, I just couldn't really walk.
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, so I can't just moxie my way out of, like,
No.
I have to follow steps and systems I'm not used to. And then in that, it's like having to really slow down.
Yeah.
Like, not just like, oh, I got to slow it down. I took Saturday off.
Yeah.
And now I have 2.5 months of burnout.
No, that grind culture or whatever, I can't do it.
Yeah, because it creates all of the same people that they grind to a point where they forget that they came up and their success was built off of the work of a collective, and then they sell their self-madeness in books and media, and it's like, I can't hear another person say they're self-made running a multi-billion-dollar company.
Can't do it.
It was just me selling social media ads in a little cart down by the river.
And I never slept.
And I killed my family, so I didn't have to worry about them.
Oh, God.
Just like, what? No. Yeah, it's, I think someone like Casey Neistat, like, he just put up a video thinking back to when he did, because he did like 800 vlogs in a row.
That's so crazy.
And how it like nearly ruined his marriage and his health and all of it. But it like also shotgunned his career up to like, a stratosphere. But now he's at a point where he even says like part of the daily vlog was like focusing on his life and a lot of transitional stuff and, being a father and, dealing with growing as a creative. And now it's more of like him turning the camera back on, like what's going on in the city, where am I going, who are these people I'm seeing, and so I feel that part like can only happen if you're at a good baseline, and that's seeing that, or like other creators who've lasted a long time on like YouTube and they've changed and adapted, but they haven't like, they haven't lost their soul. They've had people around them that can help, steer the ship or make things easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that, like you were saying earlier, like we as musicians want to do everything ourselves. So it's hard to, sometimes ask for help or
Yeah, it's not like sustainable in any sense. Well, and like I don't know if you feel this way too, but like I'll go on social media and I follow like a lot of musicians or percussionists or whatever, and I'll like see these drummers, they'll post reels of just like shredding.
Yeah.
And like it's really cool to watch, but then it makes me depressed because I'm like, because I can't do that, or like it is like the skill level that I want to get towards, but like I go on Instagram and I see all these drummers just like shredding, and like I know that that's like it's just a snapshot, and it's just like it's just this little snapshot of whatever their hour-long practice session was, and they're just posting like the best bit, and like I know these people are just posting the best of their best. And so I try to take that into consideration, but I'll just like see these people on there just like ripping, and I'm like, I can't do that. And then I just get really sad. Like, why can't I play like that?
And then it's like at the same time, then, it's like you post something and then there's somebody else who has that same thought about like, oh, I wish I could play like Dutcher plays piano. And like, you can, but it's also, 20 plus years so far. Like, it's hard to like, start now and then get to 20 years of playing. Yeah. Like, that's not, realistic. But
well, and that's so just it too. Yeah. It's like it's the hours, and like I have to remind myself that when I see these people like shredding, that's a product of the hours that they put in. Right. It's not like they just like woke up and then the second day they started playing, they could rip. you know?
Right. Yeah, they've discovered all these like child prodigies, like Justin Schultz, like he started when he could barely walk, like just plunking on a keyboard.
Yeah.
And then his dad, being a musician, was able to like help nurture that. Which my dad coming from a musical family, like he at least made the effort with everybody, me and my younger siblings, like, all right, it's second grade, you're going to start private lessons.
Yeah.
And then like you can stop in high school if you want, but we're going to, you could change instruments, you could, whatever, but
yeah.
but yeah, it has me thinking of like an experiment with social media, because I haven't been on Facebook a ton this year, which has been nice.
Me either. I pretty much act like Facebook doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's because every time I have the newsfeed eradicator Chrome plugin, so I don't have to see anything if I have to like check messages.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking about it, like, how would my mental health be if I just treated social media as like I'm posting it and I'm just gonna not engage. I'm just gonna make something that I like and that I'm happy about, put it out, or like, oh, I'm letting people know about a show, whatever. Like, we're not managed right now.
Yeah.
None of us in any of the bands, like Normal Mode, maybe a little bit more than Earth Radio.
Yeah.
Just because with Nathan running Black Swamp's socials, it's like I'm not delving too deep in analytics or metrics or trying to game the algorithm, or
right,
because that sounds it's like Mr. Beast can do that because he was raised on the internet like that. But that's not where I want to put my time and effort.
No.
So it's like, what would a year of that be like, or even a month, just to start out, like putting stuff out just because I want to,
like just creating, not consuming.
Yeah, because as much as it's like I enjoy seeing cool stuff that inspires me to like do things, but then it's the same thing. You're like, oh, I don't have any time, and they're so good. Like I heard Jesus Molina, because he's like a Cuban Oscar Peterson, basically.
Yeah.
Who has like gospel chops on keys. But he did a run with his right hand that sounded like a clean scale, but he was doing it's probably some lick or technique, but just like in the second and fifth finger, he's doing a sixth, and then he's doing a note. And, I can do that, like, like, but he's just like, and I'm like, what,
what are you doing?
How did you do? But then, the whole time he's just like, smiles. And then the caption's always like, glory to God. And I'm like,
okay.
It's like, I was a loyal soldier.
But also it was hours and hours and hours of practice that gave you that skill, not God.
Right. It's not just you woke up and were able to do that. It's because he went to Berkeley and he's, had the funding to, especially like his image changed a ton too, because he got like bariatric surgery, got new hair, new teeth.
Wow.
Like very much like an upgrade visually too. Because he was already like, talented and people knew about him, but then that upgrade to like his appearance, I think just, it broadens, I guess, his marketability.
Well, I was going to say, and doesn't that just say a lot about how our society works, is that like, not only do you have to be talented, but you also have to be good looking? ?
Yeah, it's like it's not enough to just have talent.
Can I just have talent and not have to, have a six pack or like perfectly straight white teeth?
Yeah, do I have to get veneers in my 30s?
Yeah. In order to be marketable, can I just be talented?
Yeah, or like I think of how many women I see. All their comments, they'll do something like really cool or, like on guitar or drums or whatever. And then like, there's always some dude who's like, oh, you're so beautiful.
It's like, I didn't post this for that.
I posted this because I play music.
I posted this because I wanted to post what I played.
And then like, it's such a weird, well, and that's the thing too of like remembering that the internet, it's like everyone can use it, but everyone can use there's all the crazy people,
Everyone's
the jealous
on
people,
there.
the haters.
Yep. The haters are on there.
So that's another reason where I'm like, if I just don't engage with social media, but I use it as like a portfolio almost, and just a promotional thing.
Yeah.
Because it's also like, you know, festivals, venues, they're all too busy to hold a band's feet to the fire. They just assume like, all right, just post something. We'll post day before to try and get people to come in.
Right.
We'll put it on our website and advertise it, you know, at the top of the month, and then not the rest of the month.
And then never again.
Yeah. So it's like why should I care about like what's the right thing? Because everyone who's ever gone viral or famous is like, I don't know, I put it up and then it just got famous.
Great. Wish that would work for me.
Yeah, I wish I could just put something out and then, it's like, what is going viral? You know, it's like people who got on American Idol. Like, Nate Walton isn't popular because of American Idol. He's popular because he is building a band and a brand, and he has a good voice, and he writes songs, and he's got good people involved. And he just happened to have some nice compliments from Lionel Richie.
Yep.
Like, that's cool for someone's grandma who doesn't know who Nate Walton is, but knows American Idol. But I feel like there's a shift happening away from, like, obviously there's some aspect of doing network and other, you know, traditional media, but there's more of an emphasis, not just on socials, but just like, you know, you can grow your audience without build the audience first, then start to reach out. It's mental health, needing to parse through all of that.
Well, and I feel like West Michigan too is like, it's a small enough of a community where we can almost like be grassroots about it. Yeah. Because like we've been here for so long. I mean, I didn't grow up here. I moved here in like 2013 to go to college. But even since then, just like the people that I met while I was at GV, and that's how I got this chorus gig, the Lakeshore Community Chorus one. It was like a brass quintet in college was asked to play there for a Christmas gig randomly one time, and I was a percussionist at GV, and they were like, hey, do you want to play on this gig with us? And like now I have this thing where twice a year I go and I play, and so it's just like West Michigan is small enough to like build your network and like people that way, and like, you know, start your following from the ground up. Yeah,
and like it's like that aspect is true, and then there's also I don't know, like there's something about like people who they come here and they learn and then they leave.
Too many people are leaving. Everyone is moving to Chicago or whatever.
Yeah, or Nashville, so many people. New York.
Yeah.
And it's like, I get the appeal, and I get that it's, you know, don't limit yourself, the sky's the limit, blah, 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 blah. But my thought on that is like, the only way I'm moving to a bigger city is if I have something lined up that makes sense for me to move. Yeah. Because you know, the last 2 years have felt like 12 years. And like, you know, if that's going to be that way every day in a city, like having to like hustle and late nights and no, you know, I already can't do, you know, late nights and no, you know, I feel like I've been on a deficit this whole year. Yeah. So it's like, you know, what's that times 50 billion? Yeah. It's like, okay, I get another addiction. Yeah. You know, I start smoking cigarettes or something crazy, or I don't know, but.
Yeah, my mom lives in Nashville, and every now and then she'll be like, you should move down here, and like you could live with me, and yeah, that would be cool. And that, you know, it's great that she offers. But like, I don't just want to move to a big city just because it's a big city. Like I would want to know some people and like have some gigs and stuff lined up before I just like go there and then I'm like, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah, especially like, you know, it's like there's different avenues to see all those city, in a band or as a clinician or
Right.
a guest speaker, or, there's, you build a platform and then you can just go do things.
Well, and like places like that are so saturated then, and then I feel like just like the tiniest fish and the hugest pond. It's like
Yeah.
then I just like start to kind of get down about my own skills when like who am I compared to all these other people that play and live in Nashville? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like how do I break into this like already overly saturated market?
Yeah, and it makes you think of one thing Paul Clemson said when we were tracking, was that he was like, because it was his first time working with us. It's
Yeah.
like he was surprised how efficiently we worked in the studio tracking, and how like, even if we did multiple takes, it wasn't like any of them were unusable. It was like a lot of them had good, it's like, oh, there's good tone, or there's good ideas, or, it fits the song, or
Yeah.
whatever. And how he says there's been multiple times he's worked Nashville sessions where it's just some guy with a Telecaster, and then it's, the day starts with like, hey, tune your guitar. Like,
That's
not even realizing.
crazy.
Like, not even realizing it's out of tune, or not even having that professional instinct to be like, I'm in the studio,
I
tune
need
the
to
guitar.
tune this. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I'm also like, okay, there are big city aspects that could be applied to smaller areas in terms of like the professionalism.
Yeah, totally.
But, it's big fish right now feels good, at least to have
Yeah.
a baseline, because then, I can build a bigger fish.
Yeah.
Being able to like have money coming in to afford to live and rent an office, at
Mm-hmm.
a studio, and, things that I wouldn't be ready, I'd have to live in like somebody's closet for
Yeah.
twice the money I pay now.
Yeah, I was going to say none of those things you could afford if you were living in Nashville.
Yeah. And it's, it's like, and some people might say like, oh, it's self-doubt. Like, just make the move and take a chance. And it's like, but I'm not like, I need,
Some reassurance.
yeah, I need some basics, and like, it's like, okay, everything works in the house I'm living in.
Yeah.
And like there's a baseline comfort there.
Right.
And then like, I can kind of build a better lifestyle over this next year without having to worry about like, can I afford it? Do I have the
Right.
time? Like, everything's scheduled out how it needs to be. And, work is, I've never felt, even, with quarantine, I never felt like work was like, even with the industry shut down, it was like, there's still plenty I could do
Mm-hmm.
remotely, or things I could learn. And so there's, I don't know, balance is,
Yeah. Balance is hard. Any kind of balance is hard.
any kind of, yeah, but I think it's good that, I mean, we're both multifaceted, so that
Yeah.
helps at least get us different kinds of work and meeting new people, and that's, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of like secrets other than like show up and don't be terrible, and like
Right.
do the best you can.
No, yeah, I'm finding that a lot too. It's like if I show up and I do all the things I'm supposed to do, and I am a professional, and I'm good at what I do, and I'll get the gig again.
Yeah.
It's like it's that easy. Just be professional, do what you're there to do. Voila.
Voila.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, I don't know, seems like a good takeaway for all of these chats we had today.
Lots of chats.
Yeah, but, thanks for being a guest.
Yes.
Last minute.
Thank you for having me officially again.
Yes.
Second time on the pod.
Yep. I think you're the first repeat guest, too.
Really?
So, yeah. I've wanted to do, some follow-ups with certain people, but, it's like, or like, it would be interesting to follow with everybody, because so many of the first
Yeah.
run of interviews was like, yeah, I'm just, quarantined, man, and you're the first person I've talked to since the pandemic
Dang.
about like really breaking down like what it feels like to not
have the same kind of work, or so it's good that we can just talk about like work is happening and we have goals again.
Stuff is going on.
Yeah, there's something to do other than hope there's a quarantine lift.
Right.
But
yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, where can people find out what you do and what you're up to, or do you want that? Or
yeah, I mean,
different bands, I guess, too.
Yeah, on like my own personal socials, I don't post very much. I honestly could be better about that. But as far as my bands go, I've got Camaram, which we talked about at the beginning. And I believe that's just Camaram Band everywhere. Facebook, Instagram. I don't think we have a Twitter, so just Facebook and Instagram. And then the other project I'm in with Nathan Cole's, the Math Rock Trio, is called Volitionary. And we just put out an EP and did a few shows. We're going to be kind of taking a performance break because Nathan's having a baby.
Yes.
But so I know all of his projects are kind of going on a little mini hiatus, but we're going to be writing and stuff in the downtime. And so I think we're, fingers crossed, going to start working on a full-length album now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, and that volitionary is kind of a made-up word. Volitionary. And that's Facebook and Volitionary. Facebook and Instagram.
Cool.
Sweet.
And yeah, if you want, I don't know if anyone's got students, School of Rock you're teaching at?
School of Rock, I teach drums. So if you want some drum lessons, that's where I'm at.
And then I think, and Broadleaf, you're running sound there too.
I run sound at Broadleaf, yeah. And that's been a cool spot for bands like in West Michigan to kind of come and have like a chill environment to perform in and get paid well. Because you get meal and drinks, and then they also pay well, which is kind of hard to come by sometimes now.
Yeah.
So that's been a cool spot. So I've also been running live sound there too.
Awesome. Yeah. Go
Sweet.
Check out everything they're up to on all the places, and I guess there's an outro coming, but we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Mak Mattis, everybody. Wasn't that great? It's always fun talking with them about life, social media. It's funny, the commonality between every artist seems to be, I don't want to be on socials, but I have to be on socials. But how do I navigate it? Or I want a work-life balance, but I love the work that fuels my life, which is my passion. So how do I balance that when they're intertwined? So it was good to, sit down with Mak and catch up, but also just, be honest about our goals and what we're working towards. So it's always a pleasure. Again, if you want to support Mak Mattis, check them out online. Look for them at Broadleaf Beer, in Camaram, Volitionary, and you can check all those links down below. If you also want to see the difference in interviews, I'll link the previous interview we did, so you can hear how we both have grown since that interview, and what were the differences in our goals and our concerns at the time. So great to have you around, and we'll see you for the next episode of Mitten Backstage. Take care.